219th Contact Tuesday, June 16, 1987, 1:30 am. Pages 341-373. Quetzal says, I am glad to see you again. Anyhow, I longed for a conversation with you. Billy says, the joy is also mine. A warm welcome. Quetzal says, thanks, my friend. If you don't mind, right at the beginning of our meeting, I would like to talk about something that moves me. Billy says, nothing stands in the way of that. But later, can I still ask you some questions? Quetzal says, of course. Then I will begin. It concerns the following, but now, the time has advanced more than what I estimated for our conversation. After all, we've talked for more than 2 hours. But it was a great joy for me, and I would also like to thank you for your explanations and your advice. You amaze me more and more. Billy says, the conversation was also a joy for me, and there is no reason for you to thank me. Rather, I should sooner thank you, for you gave me so much trust and initiated me into your private matters. But let's leave this, because if you have some more time, then I would be glad if I could still ask some questions. Quetzal says, I already gave you my assent. Billy says, if it's possible, I would still like to know a few things about the future, namely about the boom and the financial management of the companies and nations throughout the whole world. What is to be said about this? Quetzal says, the boom is almost over, and everything is approaching a great decline, with steadily rising unemployment in all industrialized nations of the world. This is due to a steadily increasing irresponsibility and mismanagement of the responsible persons who will fill their pockets with money and, through this, create enormous mountains of debt. The managers, boards of directors, and owners of firms will pay out millions of sums to themselves, which they will declare as remunerations or as settlements, and this already happens now and will happen more and more. Monstrous mountains of debt arise from these financial distributions, which will ultimately amount to hundreds of billions of Swiss francs or US dollars and, in the new millennium, even euros. But not only this form of economic crime will occur in the coming time, but also that which will exist as fraud and theft, as well as false accounting and large-scale accounting fraud. This also applies to the rest of the financial economy and the stock market operations, which will suffer tremendous precipitations and losses, especially after the turn of the millennium, which, overall, will basically be due to the incredible criminal and global mismanagement of an economic and financial form. Through the economic criminals, the nations and the firms will, in large numbers, be driven into ruin, to collapse, and into insolvency and, thus, into bankruptcy, and there won't be any responsible persons who will confront all this criminal mismanagement, because everyone is either too trusting, naive, or too stupid to recognize and grasp the truth, or because they themselves are out for millions in order to redevelop themselves thereby in a criminal manner. And since no responsible person will actually be able to be found, it will be such that a collapse of the financial economy and the industry takes place, which means that many economic enterprises and industrial enterprises will merge, lose their names, or change and, in the end, be dissolved, for the financial resources seep away completely. Also, the financial stock exchange will experience very bad times in the coming years, but not until the third millennium will the worst stock exchange periods drive the shareholders nearly to despair, when the profits dwindle away in billions of dollars and Swiss francs, etc., and only bring the stock exchange papers weak values. And also in the upcoming European Union, there will be a lot of trouble when a new currency, called the euro, is introduced. Through the introduction of the euro, the prices for all goods and food will suddenly be raised considerably in all nations of the European Union, by what means the people suddenly won't have enough money for their livelihood, etc. In particular, it will hit those people who have to live on a small pension and who, through the criminal and nationally unauthorized increase in food prices, etc., no longer have a livelihood. But the national leaders and other responsible persons will be blind to this because they won't care about the misery of the poor, and through criminal overpayments, secret profiteering, and through other illicit things and intrigues, they will have brought their own might to dry land, as you once formulated the putting aside of money. Billy says then the coming time will bring a lot of unpleasantness and evil in this regard. But how does it stand with the war crimes and the wars in general in the new millennium? Quetzal says everything relating to this will take its old course, but especially in the quickly coming time, as well as in the third millennium, America, Israel, Palestine, and Iraq will become a talking point in a sad and degrading way. In particular, the coming powerful figures of America, Israel, Palestine, as well as the dictator of Iraq Bush, Sharon, Arafat, and Saddam Hussein will be in the first place, who will bring multiple murders over the people through henchmen and their military, and they will still be praised for this by irresponsible sympathizers from all over the world as well as by the people whom they govern. But we've already talked about this fairly often, so nothing more should have to be said about it, except that everything will degenerate extremely viciously, claim the lives of many people, and bring tremendous suffering over countless people. No one will order a stop to the massacres. On the contrary, many who are just as degenerate and who think criminally like the murderous rulers and their minions will still shout hooray for this, as you tend to say. The world will be full of blood, and to be sure, human blood, which is spilled criminally, heedlessly, irresponsibly and senselessly by the responsible persons who order all the evil and disaster, all the murders, destruction, tortures, and annihilation. And it should also be considered that the ones implementing these criminal acts are in no way better than the ones who give the orders to do so. And the disaster will still be banned at a place, as this will be the case in the GDR within a short time, and also the shameful wall will fall and will be torn down, and then elsewhere, within a short time, a lot of worse, shameful, and inhumane evils of a similar kind will arise. Even the despicable brickwork between East and West Germany will find a continuation through the coming Israeli ruler, Sharon, for in one of his bloody acts of terrorism that will demand innocent human blood, including many women and children who will fall victim to it, he will separate the Israeli territories from the Palestinian areas with a high and long fence. However, the criminal machinations of terror and war won't be limited to Sharon, his military, and his secret service, for also Arafat and his terrorist henchmen will bring a lot of murder, death, and suffering over many innocent women, children, and men, just as the upcoming American President Bush Jr. will also do so with his secret services, military, and special murderous henchmen. But even Saddam Hussein and the coming criminal and world terrorist Bin Laden, of whom I've already reported to you, will become a talking point in a human-despising manner and bring innumerable deaths over innocent people. But I've already given explanations, made predictions, and cited prophecies about all these things several times. Billy says you speak to me from the heart, my friend. If I had the power to stop everything and to create a better world and to teach the people what is better and love, then I would do this with great joy and fervor. But one insults me only as a spinner, lunatic, charlatan, and as a deceiver, and only very few, really reasonable people listen to my word and to the teaching that I provide. Almost no earth person wants to hear the truth because this is extremely painful and requires a lot of will, understanding, cognition, and energy to follow it. Quetzal says your words and feelings hit me, and I feel how hard it is working in you. Your words are good and right, but it will still take many centuries before the people of the earth find their way to the real truth and to the true life in love, knowledge, and wisdom. You are doing the hardest and the first work for this, as well as all those people who gather around you. But overall, you will have a very difficult position because the real truth doesn't want to be heard. Billy says to further address what you said just now on the earth, rulers, politicians, and other powerful figures, psychopaths, and paranoiacs, as well as their henchmen, may commit or order murders without hesitation and unhindered, carry out acts of terrorism, and cause wars in the name of justice, internal and external security, alleged peacekeeping or peacemaking, as well as alleged freedom and love. Here it asks